Hello, and welcome back to Words and Pixels. It's March of 2021. The weather is finally starting to get nice where I live. Me and my family went to the beach earlier for a walk and we took Bobo. He was quite delighted to be walking around on the little trail that they have there. But as we were walking around, it really got me thinking about where I'm at with my writing projects, and I figured it's been forever since I've done one of these writing vlogs, so I wanted to update everybody on what's been going on. I think the last time I did one of these vlogs, I had just wrapped up NaNoWriMo of 2020, which was a very hard NaNoWriMo where I had worked on a project that didn't pan out the way that I expected, though I had finished and I finished my word count, so I was happy about that. In December, I just took a month off to celebrate the holidays and just refocus myself. And in January, I went back to Legendary, which I made a new cover for because I hated the other two covers that I made. In my last vlog, I mentioned how I had reread Legendary and it wasn't as bad as I remembered it being. I remember thinking that it was terrible and unsalvageable, and I had actually considered just shelving it and chalking it up to a good writing experiment, but we're not going back to that ever again. But here I am coming back to it. I reread it, I saw the problems that needed to be changed, and in January I went about doing a draft to change those problems. So I just went through and I did one draft where I really drilled in on the plot. I mentioned in the past that I had had an idea that changed the entire plot line, and I can't really say what that is without spoilers of some sort. Now that plot is updated, so I had gone back, I incorporated that change, I really leaned into it. Then in February, I did what are called character drafts, where I just really focus on the character arcs. I start with some of the minor characters, and then I work my way into revising some of the main characters. So I just look at the characters, I look at their motivations, I try to make their personality consistent. With one of the two main characters, I was really wibbly wobbly on that character because originally I had envisioned him as a more upbeat, like happy sort of character, and then I ended up making him a more sarcastic, arrogant sort of character, and I had to go through and really look at his lines of dialogue, and there were lines that I really liked and I thought were funny, but just didn't fit this newer version of the character that I had in my mind, so I had to go back and revise those. I really love the plot embryo. I think it was Dan Harmon who originally came up with that, but Rachel Stefan was the one, or Rachel Stefan. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing her name wrong. But Rachel Stefan was the one that I heard about it from originally, and she actually had put out like a PDF of the plot embryo, so I sat down with my iPad and I went through and I did plot embryos for the two main characters. I still want to do one for the villain because I feel like his arc isn't really up to snuff. During that draft, I really went in and made sure that their character arcs were following those plot embryos, and they did. Surprisingly, that draft went very smoothly, which I was not expecting. I thought it was going to be worse. Now I'm at a place where I actually am feeling like this is a pretty strong draft. I think this is the furthest I've ever gotten with a project, which is exciting. So I feel like this draft is very, very solid, but it still needs a lot of work. And the work that it needs is description. My relationship with description is interesting because when I originally started writing, I wrote stories that were almost entirely description. They were very much about the flow of the words and me trying to describe what I was seeing and feeling in interesting ways. They were basically all description with no plot and no character. And over time, as I started really focusing on plot and character and trying to learn plot and character, my drafts almost became the opposite. They became very sparse because I was so focused on plot and characterization and learning how to write a character arc that I became so focused on the characters and like writing a cohesive plot line that my prose was very sparse because I knew a lot of this stuff was going to change and I was just trying to line things up the right way. And I didn't want to spend a lot of time getting into the characters' heads and describing things when a lot of it wasn't even going to be used. But after years of that, I think I've been doing that since college, just kind of writing little sketches of scenes and, you know, writing outlines of chapters rather than full chapters. I had been doing that for such a long time that my prose has actually become very, very sparse and bare, which I don't like. And now I want to really, on this next draft, focus on description. But I feel like I've forgotten how to write description. So I've been checking out some resources for learning how to describe things a little bit better, which brought me to the book Word Painting. I forget the author's name. I'll write it down here. It's Rebecca something. That this is a book for writers about writing description. It's entirely focused on writing description. And the thing that I like that she talks about is how description isn't supposed to be embellishment. It's not something that you just sprinkle on the final draft to make it look nice and pretty. You know, you don't just stick some similes and metaphors on there to just make it sound good, which honestly is the way that I always thought of description. So her words were really like a nice wake-up call for me, because I always felt like, okay, I'm not going to bother. I just said earlier, I'm not going to bother with writing description because a lot of the stuff's going to get cut. And I still think that's true. You know, I shouldn't get so hung up on description that I don't actually move forward with the draft. But I think that I always felt that I should just write very sparsely now, and then later I could just add in some description to make things sound good before I go on to the final draft. And my philosophy on that, as I'm reading this book, has completely shifted. She talks a lot about description in terms of being very concrete and specific and really getting into the character's head and noting the things that they would note and using description in a way that it's not just a block of text that's describing what a character looks like or how pretty the sunset is. It's a way to teach you more about the characters, to teach you about the world, and to help further the plot along, which is just a way that I had never thought of description before. It's really about getting into the character's head, even if it's a third-person story. It's really getting into the character's head and describing the world in a way that they would. My main character is somebody who is very stressed and very anxious. She has a very difficult job that involves the safety of a person that she cares very much about, as well as a lot of people in her kingdom. And I look back at the draft now and I realize I wasn't really describing things in the way that a character in that position would. And that's what I really want to spend this draft doing. This is my viewpoint character. This is my main character. And I really want to get in there and see the world from her eyes. You know, the way that a character who is very stressed and anxious is going to view a simple walk in the park is going to be very different than a character who's light and carefree and doesn't have anything to worry about. So I really want to see how she views the world and how she describes it specifically, which will also contrast with the villain, who in the last draft I decided that he should have some viewpoint scenes. So I also want to go in and see, well, how does he view the world and how is that going to be different than how she views the world? Because I haven't really focused on the villain a lot. I focused a lot on the protagonist, and I also want to go in and focus on his character arc a little bit and what he's doing and what his viewpoint on everything is. And it would be interesting to see like how he looks at things versus how she looks at things. And I think part of the reason I never did that, and part of the reason why I struggle with description now is that I am the sort of person who has a hard time getting into my own head. And now I don't mean that I'm extroverted, because I'm not. I'm very introverted and I'm always daydreaming and thinking of things, but I'm always imagining, I guess, a world that isn't mine. And it's not always like fantasy. Like, I'm not like always daydreaming about my book, although of course I do, like most writers do. But I just tend to daydream about everything. Like, I tend to think about like what I want my life to be like, or what I wish it was like, or if I'm doing something, I daydream about being home, doing something else and something different. I never end up being present in the present moment, because the present moment ends up disappointing me. The present moment never lives up to the ideas I have for how the world should be and what things should be like in my head. And so I feel like, of course, my description lacks because I don't really take the time to notice the things around me. I did used to meditate. I went through a period of, I would say, like a few months where I meditated regularly and tried to focus on mindfulness and bringing myself to the present. And I had just a very weird resistance with that, because I felt that meditating was, I guess, harmful to my writing, because I thought that writing and daydreaming were hand in hand. You know, sometimes I like to be able to daydream about my book and think about the characters and the worlds and that stuff. And I worried that if I meditated, because meditation is all about just focusing on the present moment and not being in your mind, that I would lose that aspect of my creativity. And I'm starting to feel that I was very misguided in that. You know, there's no reason why I can't daydream constructively, you know, think about my plot and my characters. I would say that's a constructive form of daydreaming. That's me putting daydreaming to work to an extent. But there's a lot of other daydreaming that I think I could really cut down on. There's a lot that's harmful to me. So I'm constantly comparing my life and myself to others. And I think meditation could help me with that. Bringing it back to description, I also think that meditation could help with description as well. Because part of being a writer is noticing things. It's being able to describe the waves lapping up on the shore of a beach, or how quiet it is to be walking a trail alone, and taking time out of the day to just sit and be and notice the patterns of my thoughts and the inner turmoil of my emotions, and be able to note those things and attach words to them, I think is a helpful practice. It's something that could help me personally, but I think it's something that can strengthen my writing as well. If I want to get into a character's head and notice things in her world, I really need to be in my own head and notice things in my world too. And that's something that I hadn't really considered. So I think I am going to take up meditation again. I don't know how yet. I was doing Headspace, and then I had kind of just been doing my own thing. I might maybe re-sign up for Headspace because I did have some success with that. I didn't really mean for this writing vlog to be so contemplative, but I guess that's where my head is at now. That's it. I would also like to do more videos. I'm hoping that things kind of quiet down at work a little bit as far as video editing goes. That way I can work on some more video editing for here. I'd like to still do the PC video. I'm hoping to film some stuff for that soon. I have the laptop here. I would also like to do my 3D printer build, because that's just been sitting in a huge box. It's in my room. I just don't know where to put it. It's so big. That's really the problem. I don't know if I should buy a separate table. I don't know if I should clear off space. I don't know. I don't have a lot of room to work with. But let me know where you all are at with your writing projects. Definitely leave me a comment. Do you struggle with writing description? please give me advice and help if you have any to offer. Thank you for watching and have a good rest of the day. Bye!